Hello and welcome to another edition of Lab Rats. My name is Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
And this is a show where we demystify technology. You know all those weird terms and technology tips?
I do.
You do?
I do.
Good. Well, today we're going to tell you all about technology etiquette. Now, we know you're the most politest people in the world. You use your cell phones responsibly. You type very good emails. And so you guys out there in Lab Rats land don't need to learn technology etiquette. But we know a few people that do.
Yes, we do.
And you probably know too. So even though you probably know everything in this episode, we'd recommend that maybe you send this episode to a friend of yours who kind of needs to learn a thing or two about how to be polite when it comes to technology.
That sounds like a good idea.
It's a good idea. All right, so let's take a break, and we'll hear a message from our sponsor when we come back. Technology etiquette, today on
Lab Rats.
Hey, now before we get started, I just want to remind you about a little offer we have here at Lab Rats about getting the best domains for you. So if you want a domain like
My coworker is the rudest person in the world.com.
or
My boss is also the rudest person in the world.com.
.coms, .cas if you're Canadian,
.tvs.
.tvs, all of those dot somethings, you can register at hover.com, and we're going to give you 10% off if you buy it using this coupon code right here.
Can I register polite.biz?
If it's available, I'm sure you can. Hover will tell you, actually.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and frankly, you know, anything you want. Like I registered, we've registered labrats.tv sitting on that right now. I've got bumfluff.com, which isn't so polite. All kinds of stuff.
It's
Whole
not.
portfolio over there, so check it out.
Anyways, that doesn't fit this episode. Let's move on.
Let's move on to technology etiquette. So, you know, I think we all know a few people, and probably more than one, that really, they may be polite, may say please and thank you in the real world, they may eat with their mouth closed, but they're not so polite when it comes to using their technology.
Yeah, I think all of us are guilty of indiscretions at certain times, no matter how polite we think we are.
That's very true. That's very true. There's three areas, actually, that we think, you know, people tend to cross the line for the most part, right? So mobile technology, email, and social media, Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. So let's cover off our pet peeves personally, and then maybe you guys can write in and let us know what your pet peeves are too. We'll talk a little bit about how to do it the Miss Manners way.
Yes.
Let's start with email, because I think it's probably the most commonplace. We see a lot of infractions every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start with my favorite, the all caps email.
All caps? I write all my emails like that.
But, you know, so, you know, all caps, when you're typing all caps in an email, it typically is coming from somebody who's fairly new to email and doesn't know the rules. And of course, I don't know about you guys out there, but I always think of it as somebody shouting. In fact, years ago, when I was mad at somebody early on before email, like back in the CompuServe Prodigy days, I typed something all in caps to somebody, and they said, "Stop yelling at me." And I said, "No, I am yelling at you." Wow, you know, congratulations, you got the point.
Oh, so that explains all those emails I get from you.
There you go, see? Get on with it, Sean.
All right.
Send. No, so use sentence case, or use lowercase. I have a friend who uses all lowercase, and only uses caps for emphasis.
Right. So, for example, I've just written an email to you while you were describing that about whether we should go for lunch on Thursday. And it looks like I'm yelling at you about lunch. So I wouldn't say to you, "Hey, want to go for lunch tomorrow? It'll be great." That just doesn't make any sense.
Just doesn't work.
So you wouldn't want to send your email in all caps.
Absolutely.
Unless you're really hungry.
Unless you're really
Unless
hungry.
you're really hungry, yeah, it's urgent, perhaps, you're going to die. Now, you have a pet peeve around forwarding.
Yes. So there's, again, with a lot of people that are brand new to the world of email, who haven't been doing this for a long time, they'll get something that's funny in their inbox. Their friends will send them a joke or whatever, and their first reaction is, "Oh, that's cool. I got to tell all my friends." And they'll immediately forward that to everyone on their inbox or on their contact list.
Yeah.
And you know, they'll also forward every single piece of mail that they get like that fits a certain, like my mom, I know, gets just a ton of email that's just nothing but forwarded things from her friends, jokes, funny pictures, all of that sort of thing.
Things that used to be things that people would fax, now they email.
Yeah. So the thing is, occasionally there is something you may want to forward along because it's funny. But when you start forwarding absolutely everything along to everyone, then basically you become a spam generator.
Yeah.
And that's not really all that polite. People will just start sending your emails straight to their spam box automatically.
Well, some people will get marked as spam, so.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a really legitimate reason for not doing this as well, besides, you know, trying not to clog up people's inboxes, is when you finally do have something legitimate to say to people, they'll ignore it because they think it's another joke. So it's just if you have an important bit of information, it's just lost.
Got it.
So,
and I guess connected to that is this whole don't reply to all.
right.
Right? So you get an email in from somebody who's CC'd a bunch of different people because they want them to know. Don't say reply and go, yeah, I agree. It just drives me crazy. It drives me crazy when people do that. And then somebody will go, hey, they'll go reply all. Hey, don't reply all to everybody. Now,
Which is replied all to everybody.
right, correct. Yeah. So let's just be frugal with that reply all button. It's a very magical button, and it's worthwhile if something's worth sending on to the whole group. But
Yeah, and I mean, there might be something that's sent out to everybody in a company that, you definitely need to get to everybody in the company first, but then the people that need to be followed up with are just a few key people. So then you would follow up to them specifically rather than, so start taking people out of that list. And another thing is, like, if you're going to forward something to a bunch of people, it's often very polite to actually put them under the BCC field, the blind carbon copy.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to forward all of these email addresses outside the company or to a bunch of other people. You want to make sure that all these other people's
It's a
addresses
privacy issue.
It's a privacy issue.
Yeah, you don't want to broadcast other people's email addresses out there into the world.
Yes.
Good. My final email etiquette thing is attachments. If you're going to send an attachment, double check to see how big that attachment is. If it's above 5 megabytes, consider not sending it and using a different service. Right? So why? Because some people's email boxes have a maximum allowable space of maybe these days 10 megs or 20 megs. I mean, some have really big ones. You send a 10 meg email attachment to somebody who has 10 megs of space on their email account, you're going to shut them down.
Yeah.
Right? Or it'll bounce. That's the other thing that'll happen. It'll just get bounced.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is if you send a huge, huge attachment, especially to someone who's on a slower connection, is they'll be sitting there downloading that email and downloading that email, and they may have 50 other emails in the box, but they've got to wait until they downloaded that 5 megabyte file from you.
Yeah.
And if they're on dial-up, that's a really serious investment in time.
It's very inconsiderate, really.
It is inconsiderate.
Uses a program called IrfanView, if you use Windows, that you can, that'll take the big pictures that come off your camera and shrink them down to screen size, right? It'll get them down to under a meg, and that's a really good way to use, especially when it comes to photos. People forward a lot of photos, I think.
Right. And if there's situations when you can't shrink it, you actually need to send something at the full resolution. Say you're sending a bit of artwork that somebody needs in full resolution. There's other ways to do that. So you'd use something like usendit.com.
Yeah.
They have a 100 megabyte limit, I think, for standard users. If you sign up for their program, you can send up to 2 gigabyte. There's another program that's available for Windows, Mac, Linux, and mobile devices called Dropbox at dropbox.com, and that's another way to send files around.
So 2 services designed to share large file transfers.
Right, and there's others out there. These are 2 that we've used in Mind.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So.
Very good. All right, let's move on to social media. Now, social media is a relatively new phenomenon. It would include things like Facebook, Twitter, and even MySpace historically. YouTube's considered part of that social media where you're sharing things with friends, Flickr for photographs and that sort of thing. So let's talk about social media. It's a new frontier, and I think people are starting to use it a lot more, and there are a lot of not indiscretions, but poor choices around etiquette.
Yes.
One of the big things I'd like to start off with is Twitter. So on Twitter, if you've used Twitter, it's a 140-character transmission of your thoughts. And what people will do to commonly share information that come through Twitter from somebody is to send that on to everybody else, to retransmit it, or what they call retweeting. So there's etiquette around retweeting. So you want to type capital R, capital T, RT, and then the @ symbol, the name of the person who originally sent the message, and then the message in its entirety if it fits the 140-character limit. If not, you can edit it down, and you need to get the intention of the original transmission.
Right.
Right? But don't go RT @ Andy Walker, which is me, and then completely change the context of what I said, because it's almost like misquoting somebody, except outside of the journalism world.
Now, if you're online at twitter.com, or you're using one of the programs that sits on your desktop that gets Twitter and sends your messages
Like
out,
TweetDeck?
like TweetDeck or like Twirl or whatever, then there's usually a retweet option on there. So you go, for example, on twitter.com, you click on retweet, and it'll automatically put something out there that will list it as a retweet. They have a new way of doing that on Twitter. They have a special symbol on that. On something like Twirl or Tweety, they'll actually type retweeting in its entirety. You can shorten that down to RT, as you said, but it'll automatically do the @ and all that other stuff for you.
Right.
And just
I like TweetDeck for that, actually, because it actually does. So it's RT space, the @ person that you got it from, and then it echoes it. And then you can edit it down to the 140 character size, so it will be transmitted out.
Right, and the other way that you can do that is each of these things on twitter.com. When you go to this, there's a link to go straight to that post. If you really don't want to edit it down because it starts losing stuff, go to some place like bit.ly.com, bitl.ly, copy that URL, and then retweet it, and then put a link to that full post in there as well.
Very good. Okay, good. So over on Facebook, I think this is where probably a lot of the poor etiquette goes on. Invites.
Yes.
You know, how many times have you logged onto Facebook and you've been invited to 24, 25, 50 different events, like my dog is having a 6th birthday and I live in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
Please come.
Now, this may be more pronounced for you and I who have people out there that are watching us on Lab Rats and adding us as friends on Facebook than it would be for other people who are just in with their social circle.
True.
So, but there is still a little bit of that. You have to sort of pay attention to who you're sending this to. If you just do invite everybody, it's just like bam, 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 hoping you hit the targets that you want. Yeah. Whereas I think with a little bit of effort, just selecting the people you know would be interested, it'll be a lot more efficient and less annoying to everybody on your list.
I get invited to groups like, I hate people who have orange hair. You know, like, why do I want to join that group? I don't know.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy.
So our fans that are watching that, we love you, but please stop inviting us to your recitals across the
crazy
world.
groups. But I think it's true for anybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's fair enough. Did want to talk a little bit about privacy when it comes to content. So
yes.
We all take pictures. We share pictures on Facebook, on Flickr, places like that. We take video of people. Be considerate of, so it's fair enough, if you're in the content, then of course you can choose your choice to expose that part of your life to the world on social media. As soon as it's posted out there, it's there forever. There's no taking it back, right? It's archived forever, and it's really hard to remove it from the internet.
Yes.
So, be considerate. If you're being taken, if there's a crazy picture of you getting drunk with your friends, consider that your friends, who are also drunk in that picture, are also on Facebook, and so are their bosses, or their parents, or other people where they can feel embarrassed. So consider the other people in your content to make sure that you're not compromising their privacy as well.
Yeah, we'll show you a way in a future episode to sort of restrict that level of exposure, but you still want to think about that ahead of time when you're posting stuff, so that you're not inadvertently exposing other people to embarrassing situations.
And I would say explicitly, YouTube's full of user-generated content. Lots of videos about people who taking it with their Flip or their iPod Nano or whatever it is, and of course you have to consider that everybody in the world will see these things, especially the accidents where you're falling down, hitting your crotch on a fence post or something like that.
You did that?
Well, many times. Just look up my channel on YouTube. So that's kind of social media, and there's social media. There's lots more rules around that, and we'll probably cover those in a future episode. There's probably some other content on butterscotch.com. You can look up our Twitter series and our Facebook series to find out more about that kind of stuff. But we wanted to highlight those things. Finally, though, and maybe this is the biggest one of all, is mobile etiquette. Speaking of which, excuse me a second. See, there's Sean. Look, it's Sean.
Andy?
Yes?
You forgot to put your phone on vibrate.
I did forget to put my phone on vibrate. You're right.
Yeah, and you know we're shooting, right?
I do know we're shooting. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Goodbye.
So, if you're having a meeting, if you're shooting an episode of Lab Rats, if you are
at the theater,
at a
restaurant,
public, put your phone on vibrate.
Yeah.
Click.
But as well, don't just put your phone on vibrate because you saw what happened there. Your phone was like rattling all over the surface. Put it away as well so that it isn't, or put it on a soft surface or in a holster somewhere where it's not going to basically draw as much attention because of going on a hard surface like the desk.
Yeah, no, fair enough, fair enough.
It's a big problem.
Speaking of using your phone in public, if you're using your phone in public in your car, please don't. Well, so first of all, there's a legal requirement here in where we live in Toronto. You're not allowed to actually use your phone in your car. It has to be attached to the dash. You have to use a hands-free technology to use it. So there's a legal requirement there.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Some people still do. I see some people driving down the highway with the BlackBerries jammed to
there's
their
a
ears.
fine. There's a fine for that, and it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. But beyond that, even the people that are actually complying now with the law, they have hands-free, they're chatting away. It looks like they're chatting to themselves, and they're cruising at, 40 miles an hour, or in Canada, 90 kilometers or 100 kilometers an hour, into the fast lane.
Yes.
And it drives me crazy.
Yes, or does not drive you crazy fast enough.
I drive slow.
Yeah, so I've seen this too. Always when you're going down the highway and there's this big backup happening and you get up to the front of the line, finally you see the person at the front of the line is always just sitting there gesturing away with their other hand, talking to nobody.
So if your friend has sent this episode to you and you're watching it now because your friend recommended it, it's probably because you do that and you're driving them crazy.
Maybe.
So please, pull over.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of cell phones as well, there's another one that I find. Well, I do this. I'll admit it. I do this.
We all do this to a certain extent.
Yeah,
so.
and it is when you're in a conversation with someone, let's say with your wife, or your loved ones, your kids, or whatever, put your phone away. Put your devices away, just for a little bit as well. I have this really bad habit, and I'm working on this, of being in the middle of a conversation with my wife, and all of a sudden I hear in the other room, ping, I got an email, so I'm just like off and just conversation is gone. And then I come back an hour later and it's like, what? And that's just rude. So if you're having a conversation with someone, put the phone away, devote your time to them for the duration of that conversation.
Paying attention to people actually is great. I know, in a world of attention deficit disorder, it's not surprising, but there's a certain level of technology attention deficit disorder we can kind of purposely remove. Yeah, you're right, and I'm guilty of it too. I've even driven fast in the fast lane, talking to my speakerphone. So
you actually look at the speakerphone like it was the person you were talking to?
I try to keep my eyes on the road because otherwise you drive off of it. But yes.
Bad man.
Okay. I think on airplanes, in public places, if you got kids, I have an 8-year-old now, please give them a set of headphones if they're going to play the video games or they can listen to their music. We don't all want to hear Star Wars.
There you go.
There you go.
A set of headphones.
Yeah.
Maybe not these headphones because these are a bit pricey, but just give them a set of headphones, earbuds.
There you go. That'd be good. Yeah, absolutely. $9, I think you can pick up a set. So.
Yeah.
Parents, please be aware that your kids' video games or their music is driving other people crazy.
Yeah, and I think related to that as well is I think there's a tendency more these days, not only with the video games and whatnot, but with the cell phones, to treat the entire world like it's your living room. So you see people in the coffee shops going, yeah, Bob, what are you up to this weekend? Oh, you got that drunk? Really? Oh, she did what with her what? And just sharing a whole pile of personal information of
I like the conversation around it's really itchy and what kind of cream should I use?
There's some conversations that you overhear in public places you don't need to hear. And worse yet, people on the cell phone coming up to the cash and they're finally up to the cash, they're getting their mocha triple frappuccino, which will kill you by the way, and they're sitting there telling the clerk, just hold on a second. It's just like, no, don't do that. That's just rude.
That's just rude. Okay. Stop being rude.
Stop being rude.
We're rude, and we're trying to stop being rude. Please join us in our exploits to be polite and Canadianify the universe.
Yes.
We're a polite nation, right? There you go.
We try to be.
All right, let's take a break. Enough of the etiquette. We're going to rudely interrupt the show with this commercial message, and when we come back, recommendations from Butterscotch.com and your pictures. Well, if you want to find out more about email etiquette, we have actually lots of really great content on Butterscotch.com. Check out our latest series, Gmail 401, which is the 4th installment of Gmail tips and tricks.
That makes sense.
So there's actually 40 pieces of video out there that teaches about Gmail. And of course, just type in the word etiquette into our search engine on Butterscotch.com. We find lots of content there about various rules that you should follow.
Yes.
All right, let's look at pictures now.
Yeah, speaking of rules you should follow, send us your pictures, please. So we got 2 today.
Good.
So first up, from our friend George, he's got a Macalicious Mac setup here. So a bunch of different Apple devices running Lab Rats, and it's again part of our Infinite Recursion series. Nice. So you gotta make the gesture.
Oh, there you go. Click.
Okay.
All right.
There we go. So there you go. Thanks, George, for sending that in, and I'm sure we'll see this picture again at some point.
Yes.
And second, we got a photograph from Wanda in New Jersey, who is a new viewer, but she is downloading and watching all of our stuff and
she's
enjoying it quite a bit.
Out of her window?
Maybe she's checking in on the way out. I don't know. So there you go. Thank you, Wanda, for sending that in.
Awesome. You can send your pictures to
Don't Be a Rude So-and-so at labrats labrats.tv.
Or more simply,
feedback@labrats.tv.
hey, and if you have etiquette violations, technology etiquette violations you'd like to share with us, that we can do it on a future show, you can also send us an email about that too.
Feedback@labrats.tv.
That would be the easy way to do it.
Yeah,
exactly. All right, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We would be foolish to talk about rudeness out here if you weren't polite out there. My name is Andy Walker. He's Sean Carruthers. We'll see you next time.
Are you ready? Try this at home.
I'm actually going to bring mine up, and I'm going to. Is your ringer on or off right now?
It's off.
Leave it on. I'm going to call you in the middle of you talking about that.
That's comedy. That's what that is.
It's comedy gold.
You gotta roll, you gotta improv.